Some doors don't creak, they sigh. That's what the front door of Larkspur did when I nudged it open at dusk with the back of my flashlight. Not a creak, not a groan, just a tired final exhale, like it had been waiting for someone to come back. And I did. 20 years late. The porch was sagging, the windows dust-stained and vine-covered stared out like cataracts, and yet the air didn't smell like an old house. It smelled like salt, eucalyptus, and something faintly citrusy, lemongrass, maybe? A spa smell, which is funny since this place was more detox bunker than resort. The sign above the entrance still read Larkspur Holistic Recovery. Just beneath it, carved directly into the wood in neat block letters, was a second phrase that gave me chills even before I stepped inside. We no longer feel pain. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you really like what I'm doing here. And tell me, where in the world are you listening from tonight, and what time is it? I want to know who's still awake with me. Now turn off the lights, maybe turn on the fan for some soothing noise, and let's get started tonight. Here's what they don't tell you about abandoned buildings. They don't stay abandoned. Not really. They breathe differently. The Larkspur retreat wasn't falling apart, exactly. No graffiti, no shattered glass. Even the potted succulents near the entrance were alive, or at least trying to be. Inside, the front lobby still had faint outlines of furniture burned into the dusty floor. The couches were gone, but the shape of where they'd sat remained, like the echo of someone still sitting there cross-legged, sipping herbal tea and talking about their aura. I didn't come here looking for ghosts. I came here for a story. 11 people walked into this place in July of 2003 and never walked back out. No screams, no 911 call, no sign of forced entry. Just poof, gone. Like a glitch in the simulation. You've probably heard one of those theories. They staged it, ran off to Costa Rica. Or cult suicide in the woods, despite no bodies ever being found. But there's a reason this case has never fully caught the public eye. The whole thing was too clean. Too peaceful. Like the building itself had permission to forget. The floorboards didn't creak as I stepped through the main hallway, just muffled my steps like a thick carpet of silence. The front desk still had sign-in sheets. Names I didn't recognize, all dated the same. July 14th, 2003. Next to each name, a single checkmark, except the last one. Next to it, instead of a checkmark, was a simple, perfect spiral drawn in blue pen, a tight coil, 5 turns exactly, almost like a fingerprint. I copied the symbol into my notebook. As I did, I noticed something odd. All the pens at the desk had ink, every single one. Not dried out, not missing. Who stocks pens in a building no one's entered since Bush was president? I'll admit something weird here. I started to feel watched. Not in a someone's behind me way. More like I was being remembered. Like the building itself recognized me. Which is crazy. I've never been here before. Have I? The smell got stronger as I walked. Lemongrass, salt, and something sweet underneath it all. Something that didn't belong. If you've ever walked into a friend's house and known instantly that their grandma had just peeled an orange, it was like that. But there were no oranges. Just a door at the end of the hallway, cracked open a sliver. The therapy room. I pushed it open with the flashlight again. Inside, time had stopped. There were mats on the floor, soft meditation pillows, and a light scent of lavender that felt recent, as in someone had spritzed it last week, not last decade. The big window overlooked the empty garden beds, and in the corner stood a small altar. Now this is where I should have left, but I didn't, because something on the altar was glowing. Nope, not glowing. Reflecting. My light had bounced off something metallic. I stepped closer and found it, a charm shaped like a tear, etched with the same spiral symbol from the sign-in sheet. And underneath it, a slip of paper. Faded but intact. I read it out loud. Do not fear the threshold. All healing begins in surrender. Okay, creepy, but it's a retreat. They were into that sort of stuff. I pocketed the charm, turned to leave, and that's when I noticed it. The window was open. I'm not talking broken, I mean open. Unlocked, slid halfway up, curtain gently lifting in the breeze like someone had just left. Like someone was here, except the retreat was supposed to be abandoned. I checked the locks. They were rusted stiff. But the window? Smooth as butter, like it had never been sealed at all. And just outside in the mud by the flower bed were footprints, bare, human, fresh, headed toward the woods. Now maybe they were mine. I'm not going to pretend I'm Sherlock. I took pictures, traced the steps back, but here's the thing. They weren't coming from the window. They were leading to it. Someone walked into Larkspur through that window, not out, and I wasn't sure if they were still here. You ever see a meal that looks too perfect? Like, not just restaurant perfect, but fake perfect. That's what I found in the dining hall of Larkspur. Picture this, a long wooden table set for 12, 11 plates, 1 bowl of steamed millet, and a giant ceramic pitcher in the center marked only with the word elixir, and a 12th plate flipped upside down like someone had been dismissed. There was dust on everything, but only on the edges of the plates, not on the silverware, not on the glass pitcher, and not a single cobweb near the table. Just a faint shine of lemon oil polish and a sticky, sweet residue near the cups. I'm not going to lie, I did the thing no one in a horror story should do. I dipped my finger into the pitcher, thick, cold, smelled like pine, sugar, and something else. Like mouthwash and syrup had a baby. I didn't taste it. I may be curious, but I'm not that dumb. Still, something about it felt important, like it was part of the ritual. That's when I found the menu, if you can call it that, folded neatly on a corkboard near the exit. It read, open quote, July 14th, final cleanse, steamed buckwheat, fermented root milk, prana broth, filtered, elixir, 50 ml per guest. Note, no salt, no metal utensils, no outside energy allowed. Close quote. Outside energy? Okay, sure, no biggie. Just your standard, we think our salad vibrates on a higher plane kind of cult talk. But here's what made me stop laughing. Each item on the menu had a guest's name written beside it, except for the last one. It just said, Mara, observer only. If you remember from the outline, Mara is the only person who ever came back. So yeah, things were starting to line up. There's an old saying in detox retreats, cleanse the gut, cleanse the soul. At Larkspur, they apparently took that a little further. The next room was the kitchen, and that's where the real story started cooking. It was spotless, surgically clean like someone had bleached it recently, counters wiped, fridge humming, every jar in place labeled in weird Latinized herb names, urtica, sambucus, tenacidum, also noibus. I Googled that one later. It doesn't exist. And taped to the inside of the pantry door was a schedule written in looping handwriting. Open quote, 7 morning chants, Zo 8, dry brush therapy, 9:30, sun steep teas, 12, midday meal, 14, final elixir dose, 17, light fasting begins, 19, threshold ritual, doors locked at 20, close quote. Let's pause there. Locked from the inside, remember. So 11 people went through this whole wellness boot camp, and at 7 p.m. that night, they performed something called the threshold ritual. Then all doors were locked by 8 p.m., and by sunrise, they were never seen again. Which brings us to the final file I found in the kitchen drawer, a manila envelope labeled, Discharge Notes Do Not Shred. Inside, 1 sheet of paper, just one. It listed 11 names, dates of arrival, progress checkboxes, and 1 final line beside each name. Status released from body. Status released from body. Status released from body, all 11. This was not a resignation form. This was a graduation list. They weren't discharged to go back home. They were released. Oh, and here's something for the science nerds out there. Each person's name had an energy frequency listed next to it. I wish I were joking. Mara, 170.8 megahertz. Daniel, 130.6 megahertz. Eleonora, 144.2 megahertz. And so on. For comparison, the average human cell functions around 62 to 72 megahertz, according to the kind of websites your chiropractor's cousin sends you. So apparently, these folks were vibrating with ascended purpose, or however they put it. But that's the weird part. Mara, the only survivor, had the lowest frequency of the group, and hers was the only status not filled in. Maybe that's why she came back. Here's the even weirder part. The discharge sheet was dated July 13th, one day before the final dinner. So, were they already planning to vanish? Was the paperwork filled out in advance? Or did the ritual work backwards? Academically speaking, some researchers argue that extreme isolation combined with strict dietary shifts can induce shared hallucinations. Others say this is a textbook case of group psychosis. But then how do you explain no bodies, no signs of departure, and one witness who can't even explain her own name? I shut the drawer and felt something shift in the air, like pressure. You ever walk into a room and feel like someone just finished talking about you? That. I turned to leave and saw that the 12th plate was no longer upside down. It was upright, clean, waiting. Eleonora Hatch didn't look like a cult leader, at least not in the photo I found taped to the wall behind the reception desk. She wore a pale linen tunic and one of those wide smiles you usually only see on yoga retreat websites, calm, maternal, and a little too confident in something invisible. The photo was dated April 2003, just 3 months before the disappearances. Caption underneath in gold ink, open quote, "Dr. Hatch welcomes you to your becoming." Close quote. Not healing, not recovery, becoming. Let me tell you what we actually know about her. She was a licensed anesthesiologist in Portland until 1997 when her license was suspended for prescribing non-standard chemical agents to patients without documentation. A polite way of saying she was experimenting. After that, she disappeared from the public record for 4 years. Then in 2002, she suddenly reappeared in rural Oregon with enough cash to buy an old equestrian lodge. She turned it into LARKSPUR Holistic Recovery, a healing retreat that offered natural detox, energy work, emotional fasting, and light-based trauma release, which sounds like the title of a failed indie album. No one really knows where the money came from. One theory, an inheritance. Another, patience. The dark theory, she was selling substances she claimed could realign memory. And here's where it gets interesting. According to archived forums I found before I came here, thank you Wayback Machine, Hatch had a small online following under the name Sister Helia. She posted theories about molecular memory traps, suggesting that trauma physically stays in the body unless you dissolve the ego's crust with photonic nutrition, whatever that means. She didn't believe in psychiatry. She didn't believe in surgery. She believed illness was a choice, and healing was obedience to higher frequency. Let me be clear, I'm not here to mock alternative medicine, but I am going to raise an eyebrow when a woman tells recovering addicts they need to stare at blinking lights and drink celery vinegar to erase their childhoods. And let's talk about the people she invited here. I found their intake forms in a metal file cabinet organized alphabetically. Neat, handwritten notes beside each one. Open quote, cleanses easily. Already shows dissociation, promising. High inner light, but needs correction. And my personal favorite, former heroin user, vulnerable to suggestion, strong candidate for ceremony, close quote, ceremony, with a capital C. So yeah, by the time the 11 guests showed up in July 2003, Hatch already had her plan. They weren't patients, they were participants. And the Larkspur retreat wasn't a sanctuary, it was a stage. But here's the wildest part. Hatch never showed up in the police reports. Not her body, not her personal effects, not even a single strand of hair. The bed sheets in her private quarters, clean. Bed made, empty, except for a white robe on a hanger with one word embroidered on the chest, Oblivia. Is it a name, a code word, a reference to something? Either way, that's when I noticed the dresser drawer was slightly ajar. Inside it were 3 items. 1, a small leather journal with a magnet clasp. 2, an old cassette tape labeled Threshold. 3, a wooden hairbrush, with every single bristle bent backward, like it had been used with serious force. Naturally, I opened the journal first. The first page read, open quote, I saw the corridor again last night, the same one, light at the end, but this time there were footprints in the light. That must mean we're ready. Close quote. Page after page, she documented the dreams, the visions, the feelings. Not psychotic, just deeply obsessed. It read like the kind of thing you'd hear whispered in a float tank at 3 a.m. while your friend's drinking kava. But by the third to last page, something shifted. Her handwriting became uneven, less sure. The sentences turned clipped. Open quote, Daniel refused the bath again. Mara won't take the dose. Noise from the vents, scraping, clawing, but nothing there. We are so close, the doors will know. The threshold hums, close quote, and the very last page, blank. Except for one scribbled phrase in red ink, open quote, we are not gone. We are inside. Close quote. Now, let's pause. There are a few competing theories in fringe psychology circles about shared delusional disorder, also known as folie à plusieurs. It happens when a group collectively adopts a belief system, often through the influence of a dominant personality. The group starts to see things, feel things, act as one unit. Was Hatch orchestrating one of those? Or did they actually believe they were escaping something? The cassette tape offered more clues. I used my phone's adapter to play it. The first 30 seconds were just ambient tones, like a drone or hum. Then came Hatch's voice. Open quote, you are floating now. You are drifting into the hum of the real world. This, what you call the body, is the veil. Drink the elixir. Close the eyes. Repeat. I am light. I am not here. Close quote. And then silence. Except not really silence. There was one more sound at the very end, like a knock. Slow. Measured. Hollow. 3 times, then static. I took my headphones off, and that's when I heard it again. Not in the tape, in the wall behind me. 3 knocks. Slow. Measured. Hollow. Exactly the same. That's when I realized the journal wasn't the only thing still warm. The hairbrush had heat, as if someone had just put it down. They say some rooms are better left locked, but here's the thing. This room wasn't locked. It was inviting me. Back behind the hydrotherapy wing, past a crumbling archway lined with half-dead vines, was a door painted in matte white. Unlike the others, there was no label, no room number, no window to peek through, just a tarnished handle and the faint scent of peppermint and dust. I pushed it open. There was only one way in. No side door, no exit in the back, no windows, not even a vent. The walls were upholstered in soft gray fabric, soundproofed like a music studio. It reminded me of those rooms they use for sensory deprivation therapy, except this one didn't feel empty. It felt listening. Inside, there were 12 meditation mats arranged in a perfect circle. Each mat had a candle placed neatly in front of it, burned to different lengths. One had only a blackened wick, unused. The 12th, again. Always 12. Always one missing. At the center of the circle was a low platform, cushioned, almost like a makeshift altar. On it, a small metal bowl, a tuning fork, and a sealed vial of thick golden fluid labeled simply, clearing. I sat down on the nearest mat. My phone's flashlight cast long shadows across the walls. That's when I noticed the writing, invisible at first, but now catching the light. Someone had written affirmations across the entire room in ink only visible under oblique light. Open quote, your breath is no longer yours. Pain is memory you are forgetting. Return is a disease. Only departure is truth. No door is real, close quote. Super relaxing, definitely feeling the self-care vibes. At this point, I realized I had been holding my breath, and then something clicked. A soft ding, like a tuning fork, had been struck, but I hadn't touched it, and yet the bowl at the center of the altar vibrated slightly, the fluid inside shimmering. Now look, I'm a rational person. I'm skeptical of ghosts, aliens, and essential oils that claim to fix your credit score. But in that moment, I was sure of one thing. I wasn't the only one in the room. I didn't move. I didn't speak. I just listened. And somewhere in the thick silence, I swear I heard something like a whisper. Not in my ears, but in the air itself. Like someone breathing near my shoulder. Then came the smell. Cinnamon, clove, cedar. Something warm, not the sterile plant-based scent from the kitchen. This was human, cozy, specific. Like someone had been sitting on that very mat 20 minutes ago, sipping chai and meditating their trauma away. And then I noticed the candle. The one in front of me had a flickering ember, just a tiny red glow. It had relit on its own. I stood up, slowly, backed away toward the door, which of course had quietly closed behind me. No latch, no slam, just closed. I turned the knob. Still worked. Thank the cosmos. I stepped out, shutting the door gently behind me. But right as it clicked shut, I caught sight of something at the base of the frame. Carved into the door jamb so small you'd miss it unless you were looking. Healing is just a polite word for erasure. Yeah, not ominous at all. So here's the thing. Every wellness facility has a deep therapy room, a sensory chamber, a deprivation tank, a rebirth dome, whatever fancy term they come up with. But this one wasn't about calming the senses. This was about breaking them. Academic theories suggest that prolonged silence combined with isolation and repetitive sound patterns can induce dissociative states, especially in trauma-affected individuals. But this was beyond therapeutic technique. This was a ritual space. And you know what clinched it? When I returned to the hallway, the lights were on, just for a second, a flicker, maybe two, then darkness again. But I had checked the fuse box earlier. There was no power. The generator had been dead for years. You'd think that's where the section ends. That I leave the room, disturbed but safe, and go make a cup of tea or something. Nope, because right around the corner from the healing room, I found a second door. This one sealed shut, bolted, latched. A tarnished brass plaque above it read, "Participant access, circle threshold only." And taped to it, yellowing and water damaged, was a single page torn from what looked like a participant manual. It had been underlined in blue marker. Over and over. Open quote, "Threshold circle participants must enter with open heart and quiet mind. Once within, silence must be absolute. Any attempt to leave during resonance may result in incomplete detachment. Do not attempt to open the door for others. It must remain closed until all are gone. Gone. Not done. Not finished. Gone." And then I heard it, that sound again. Ding, the tuning fork, coming from inside the sealed room. I didn't open it. Not yet, but I left my notebook in front of the door as a test. 10 minutes later when I came back, the notebook was gone. There's a particular kind of dread that only comes from hearing a refrigerator running in a building that hasn't had power in 20 years. That was the dread humming through the walls when I walked back into the kitchen at LARKSPUR. See, earlier I told you the generator was dead. That wasn't a guess. It was confirmed. I checked the basement myself. No fuel, no sound, nothing but cobwebs and one squirrel skeleton, which I did not touch, thank you. But now the old Sub-Zero fridge was softly buzzing like a content animal, and when I placed my hand against the door, cold. Not cool, not slightly damp. Cold. I opened it. The inside was nearly empty. Just 4 shelves and a single box on the middle rack, a small black-lidded container made of some matte, rubbery material. No branding, no label, just a single embossed spiral. Again with the spirals, it didn't feel like plastic. It felt skin-like. Slightly warm to the touch, which, by the way, makes 0 sense for something that was just pulled out of a running refrigerator in an abandoned cult rehab center. Naturally, I opened it. Yes, I'm aware that makes me the guy who dies first in every horror movie. Let's all take a moment to appreciate my bravery/stupidity. Inside the container was a translucent gel the color of sea glass. Green-blue, softly glowing from within. The surface quivered when I breathed on it, like it had lungs. I didn't touch it, but beneath the gel something was suspended, a sliver of metal, about the size of a guitar pick, covered in etched markings like circuitry or sigils. I couldn't tell which. Then my flashlight flickered, once, twice. And just for a split second, when the beam crossed the surface of the gel, I saw a reflection that wasn't mine. It was a woman, pale face, no pupils. Her mouth was open like she was singing, and then she was gone. Just light again. I slammed the container shut. That's when I noticed the temperature display on the fridge. It was set to -2°C, but not just set, actively holding. There were digital controls still lit up, gently blinking, powerless building, dead grid, and somehow a fridge running on what? Dreams? I stepped back, reevaluating everything I thought I understood. This wasn't just a group hallucination case anymore. This wasn't about a toxic cleanse gone wrong. This was controlled, deliberate, maintained. Someone or something was keeping the elixir cold. I returned the box to the fridge, slowly, respectfully, and that's when I saw it. A note taped to the inside of the door. Faint ink on yellowed paper. Open quote, elixir dosing instructions administered only after complete stillness. May cause temporary visual echoes. Do not exceed 3 milliliters. Refrigerate before each dose. Do not bring near mirrors. Close quote. Great. Love that last part. Nothing suspicious about a liquid that gets fussy around mirrors. You want the kicker? There was a second box tucked behind the vegetable drawer. Same material, same seal, but this one was empty. Only a smear of green-blue residue remained inside, and someone had written on the lid, in marker, jagged and rushed, open quote, she took too much. We could not hear her go. Close quote. Could not hear her go. Go where? Go how? If this was death, where were the screams? If this was escape, where were the footprints? Academic fringe theory time again. Some researchers believe that in high-control group environments, sensory manipulation can lead to full dissociation, especially when combined with fasting, sleep deprivation, and synchronized activity. You stop being you. You become open, programmable. But even in those extreme cases, there's always residue, emotion, panic, none, just emptiness. Everything was too clean. I closed the fridge. Its hum faded immediately. Not like the compressor turned off, like the sound itself decided to stop. I started to walk away when I noticed the faintest discoloration on the floor, a line of tiles slightly different in shade. I knelt down, ran my fingers along the seam. A trapdoor, hidden under the fridge. No handle, just a groove where someone with long nails or a really determined ghost had scratched an opening. I followed the edge until I found the weakest point and pried it up with my multi-tool. Beneath it, a ladder leading into darkness, and one word scratched into the wood in something that looked like burnt ink. Open quote, deeper, close quote. There were no footsteps in the dust, no recent marks, but the air rising up from the hatch was warm, humid, breathing. And I swear to you, I swear on everything, I heard something faint echoing from below. A soft voice singing a single note on repeat. Wordless, like a tuning fork with a soul. Just like the voice I saw reflected in the gel. I didn't go down. Not yet. I needed light. A real flashlight. Not the flickering one on my phone that dies every 12 minutes, like a 2009 BlackBerry. So I closed the hatch, wrote "Do not go alone" in Sharpie on the tile. And then I did something I never thought I would do in a haunted wellness center. I went to find the mirror room. Because I needed to see something for myself, and whatever that gel was, it didn't want to be reflected. So here's the thing about mirrors. You don't actually see yourself in them. You see the version of yourself that light remembers. A reversal, a delay, a ghost caught in bounce back. And sometimes, especially in places like Larkspur, mirrors remember more than just you. I found the mirror room by accident. I'd followed a cracked wall sconce to what used to be the therapy wing, where patients were encouraged to reflect in silence after each cleansing session. Yes, really, reflect. The cult puns were out of control. The room was round, pale green, and smelled faintly of ozone, like something had been scorched clean. 12 tall mirrors stood in a circle, angled slightly inward, like they were all watching each other. Some had shattered corners. Others were flawless. Each was rimmed in dull brass with a single word etched at the top. Open quote, stillness restoration, unwinding, severance, hollowing, return, absolve, shedding, flow, ascent, eclipse, becoming. Close quote, yeah. I know. Total Pinterest board meets demonic ritual energy. I stepped to the center of the ring, not knowing what I expected. Just me, my flashlight, and the faint aftertaste of lavender in the air. But the moment I crossed the invisible line between the mirrors, something shifted. The temperature dropped, but only on my skin. I stopped hearing the creak of my shoes, the buzz of my breath. The mirrors didn't reflect what was behind me anymore. They started reflecting what was missing. In the mirror labeled hollowing, my eyes weren't there, just smooth skin. In ascent, my arms were wings, bony and curled like crow feathers. And in Severance, my reflection was still, but my body moved, a 1-second lag, a delay between what I did and what I saw. I should have left, but there's something hypnotic about seeing your body wrong. It makes you stay longer than you should, like a dog sniffing poison just because it smells familiar. I turned slowly in a circle, and that's when I saw it. Not in any one mirror, but in all of them at once. A pale, half-formed face watching me from behind the glass. Not reflected, embedded, pressed like a memory into every surface. Its mouth opened, but no sound came. Then all 12 mirrors shimmered. Not shattered, rippled, like water, like the gel. Suddenly, one word bloomed on all the glass simultaneously as if breathed across them by an unseen mouth. Open quote, elixir, close quote. Yeah, I was already regretting my entire life. Then came the real kicker. As I stepped back, one of the mirrors, becoming, flickered with an image that didn't belong to me. A room. Same wallpaper, same scent, but the furniture was new. Fresh sheets, shoes by the door, and standing in the center was a family. A real, living family. Smiling, posing, 7 people. It was the last photo ever taken of the Marshalls, the family who disappeared from this center 24 years ago. They'd come for a communal cleansing retreat. They never left. Police found all their clothes, electronics, and personal belongings still in their rooms, but not a single footprint past the dining hall. Security footage from the last day was wiped. Only that photo remained, except now, somehow it was playing in a mirror like a memory reel. I reached out toward it, and the moment my fingers touched the glass, I felt heat. The mirror pulsed beneath my skin, and suddenly I was overwhelmed with someone else's sensation. Running, breathing fast, fear. Someone was chasing me, but it wasn't behind me, it was inside me. I yanked my hand back and collapsed against the floor. The mirrors went dark, all but one. Eclipse. In that one, my face was gone entirely, just a blur, a placeholder, and written faintly beneath the glass were 4 numbers. Open quote, 1998, close quote. That was the year the Marshalls disappeared. And the same year Larkspur was shut down by the state after a surprise inspection turned up unauthorized pharmaceuticals, unlicensed medical procedures, and something chilling filed under unspecified experimental therapies. Let's pause for a second and address the elephant in the echo chamber. What happens when an entire family is swallowed by a program so deep it doesn't leave bruises? Just silence. What if the process wasn't meant to kill them, but to unmake them? Academic Debate Corner. There's a theory in psychosomatic medicine that the human self can be reprogrammed under sustained meditative and chemical influence. You're still alive, technically, but all your core memories and identity markers are suppressed, a living ghost. Maybe that's what the elixir was for, not healing. Erasure. I stood up, wobbling a little, and one last thing caught my eye. Etched faintly behind Severance, almost invisible unless the light hit it right, was a sentence. Open quote, they don't disappear. They eclipse. Wait for the night and you'll see them walking again. Close quote. Lovely. So to recap, we've got a running fridge in a powerless building, a glowing gel that echoes people's faces, a mirror room that shows you how you vanish, and a message saying the disappeared might not be gone, just waiting. Nothing terrifying about that, right? I left the mirror room and returned to the hallway, and as I passed one of the broken windows, I caught a glimpse of my reflection in the glass. No eyes, no mouth, just static. Cool. Now all I had to do was go back to the fridge, open the hatch, and climb into the darkness alone, with zero backup, and no guarantee I'd come back with my own face. Because that's what sleep storytellers do for you, right? We dive where it's dark so you can dream in peace. But before I went down, I left a sticky note on the nearest wall just in case someone came after me. Open quote, if you find this, I went looking for the Marshalls. If I come back weird, don't let me out. I used to joke about crawl spaces, in the haha, what if something grabs your ankle kind of way. But there's no punchline when you're actually shoving yourself into the rotten belly of a 1970s walk-in freezer with one hand on a flashlight and the other clutching a granola bar like it's a crucifix. The hatch inside the old fridge wasn't even properly hidden, just a square metal panel slightly ajar with a heavy latch like it belonged on the set of a Cold War submarine movie. You'd think a place like Larkspur would have tried harder to disguise it, but maybe they didn't expect anyone to come looking. Or maybe worse, they wanted it found. It smelled like copper and lavender. That again. Every time something bad was about to happen in this place, the lavender would show up like it was clocking in for work. I pried the hatch open. The darkness behind it wasn't just black. It was void black. Not the absence of light, but the suggestion that light itself had never been invited. There was a ladder, but only for the first 6 feet. After that, it turned into a slope, smooth and almost rubbery. The inside walls were lined with some kind of soft, sound-absorbing foam, and as I slid down, my own heartbeat became the loudest thing in the world. About halfway through the tunnel, my flashlight started flickering. So naturally, I did what any brave investigator would do. I screamed softly into my sleeve and told myself jokes to stay sane. What's worse than getting trapped in a cult basement? Pause. Getting trapped in a cult basement with no cell service and 12% battery. See? Comedy. Survival through sarcasm. At the bottom, the tunnel opened into a space I can only describe as unnatural. Not in a sci-fi alien way, more in the why does this exist kind of way. It was a circular chamber, maybe 30 feet wide. Every inch of it covered in matte black padding, like a sensory deprivation room. Except in the center, there was something glowing, a single chair, strapped to a platform bathed in soft white light that had no source, just ambient, dreamlike. And sitting in the chair, no one. But the straps were buckled, tight. There were 5 other platforms around the room, all empty, except for a faint indent, like someone had sat there for a long time. The kind of long that leaves behind not just shape, but intent. This is where they did it, where the marshals went, or more likely, where they were taken apart. On the far side of the room, something was scrawled on the padded wall in greasy red marker. Open quote. If you sit, it starts again. Close quote. I didn't sit, but I looked around for clues. Anything, evidence, even a sticker. But all I found were fragments. A child's drawing taped under one platform. It was crayon, showing 7 stick figures with big smiles standing under a sun. One of them was labeled me. The others had names, but they were blurred, like the drawing had been scrubbed. I pocketed it. In the corner, I found what looked like a discarded set of clothes, washed, folded neatly, and still warm. Not dusty, not aged, like someone had just been here. As I turned to leave, I heard something. Not footsteps, more like a sound entering my head without bothering to use my ears. A voice. Whisper soft, but unmistakably female. Open quote. There are no missing people, only misplaced lives. Close quote. I whipped around, but there was no one. The air pulsed with heat and pressure, like being inside a slowly beating heart. And then I saw it. A thin hairline seam along the far wall. Another door. I pressed on it. It didn't give, but the moment my hand made contact, the room got colder. The light above the chair dimmed. A distant hum started up behind the walls, like some massive machine had stirred to life after decades of rest, and something inside that wall pressed back. Not a hand, not a face, just a presence. It didn't want me to open the door, but it wasn't strong enough to stop me. Not yet. I backed away and climbed out as fast as I could, shoes slipping on the smooth incline of the tunnel. When I emerged into the freezer, the hatch slammed shut behind me on its own. Funny thing, though, the fridge was now plugged in and humming. Even though the outlet was still rotted and broken and the building had no power, I didn't open it again. Instead, I stumbled back into the hallway, clutching the child's drawing like a ticket to somewhere better. I didn't realize until then my fingers were covered in the same gel from the Marshall's fridge earlier, that thick opalescent stuff. It was seeping out of the drawing. So, quick academic sidebar, there's a controversial theory in experimental psychology called somatic memory transference. The idea that deeply traumatic experiences can be biologically encoded and transferred through touch, objects, or environmental imprinting. What if the gel is a kind of medium, a bioresin for memory? What if the drawing wasn't a drawing at all, but a recording? I grabbed my camera, took a picture, and sent it to a friend who works in visual forensics. She texted back a minute later. Open quote, "That's not crayon, that's blood protein mixed with a stabilizing agent, possibly pharmaceutical grade. Whatever this is, it was made." So let's recap again, shall we? The Marshalls aren't just missing, they might have been chemically transferred. Their memories are leaking into objects. The facility still runs in some way, possibly autonomously. And I may have just triggered a mechanism that wasn't meant to start again. And the worst part? I looked into the mirror by the exit again. This time, my reflection smiled before I did. You know how your brain will sometimes just insert things to protect you? Like a memory edit. That's what I thought had happened when I saw her, that I'd invented her. Like my brain had put a sticker over something horrible. She was sitting at the top of the stairs when I came back from the tunnel room, knees pulled up, hair in front of her face, humming softly. No dust on her, no stiffness in her limbs. Like she had just walked in from recess. I froze. My first thought, that's one of the Marshall girls, but she didn't look exactly like any of the photos I'd seen. A little older maybe, or wrong somehow. Like someone had used a picture of her as a reference but didn't get the eyes quite right. Too still, too wide. "Hey," I said, soft. "You okay?" She stopped humming, turned her head just enough to show half her face. "You're not supposed to be here," she said. Voice like static behind glass. I did what any reasonable person would do in that situation. I sat on the floor, 3 steps below her, and tried not to breathe too loud. Are you Sarah?" "No." "Did you know the Marshalls?" She tilted her head. "I think I was one." That got me. Not I knew one. Not I lived here. I think I was one. "Do you mean you were part of the family?" She didn't answer. Just pressed her palms flat against the wooden stair, eyes locked on something behind me. Then she said, "You moved the drawing." My hand went instinctively to my jacket, the crayon blood drawing, still there. "It was on the floor," I said. "That's how they find you." I didn't ask who they were. At this point, context clues were pretty clear. I leaned in slightly. "Why are you still here?" She blinked once, slowly, like it took effort. "Because I didn't sit in the chair." Behind us, a door slammed. Not from the wind. There wasn't wind. The girl stood abruptly, arms stiff at her sides. "You need to leave this floor," she said, "before it gets here." I stood, heart in my throat. "Before what gets here?" She looked at me, no through me, and whispered, "The nurse." "Okay." "No thanks." I grabbed my bag and bolted down the hallway. Behind me, her humming started again. Same tune, but distorted, off-key. And then came the clicking. Not footsteps. Clicks, like high heels or claws against tile, getting faster, sharper, closer. I ducked into an old break room, slammed the door, and held my breath. Outside, something scraped its fingers or its tools along the wall. Tap, tap, sniff, tap. And then it moved on. I stayed hidden for maybe 10 minutes, long enough for my smartwatch to buzz that my heart rate was in peak cardio range. Thanks, Fitbit. Very helpful. When I finally peeked out, the hallway was empty again, but taped to the outside of the door was something new. A visitor's badge, dated that same day, with my name on it. Crisp, clean, printed in sharp ink, not old, not degraded. I didn't even have a badge. I took it down and flipped it over. Written in marker on the back, open quote, "You're already checked in. Might as well stay." Close quote. "You ever feel your stomach drop out like an elevator with no floor?" That was me. I shoved the badge in my bag and started filming again, narrating in a whisper just to stay focused. "Okay, I'm at the top floor of LARKSPUR. Just saw a girl who may or may not be Sarah Marshall, or an imprint of her. Someone or something is pretending to be a nurse. There's a room with a memory chair, and now, apparently, I'm registered as a guest here." Here's where the academic part kicks in. There's a psychological model called traumatic convergence memory theory. Basically, it posits that if enough people experience similar trauma in a specific space, their memories can begin to sync and recreate elements of those events even across generations. This place, it's saturated in that kind of residue. If the marshals were taken, changed, or absorbed by whatever Larkspur was doing down there, that trauma could have imprinted on the building itself. And now it's reacting to me like I'm part of it. I turned a corner to head back to the lobby. But there was no lobby, just another hallway. Longer, deeper. And I swear it smelled like the sea. Not ocean breeze air freshener. Real saltwater, algae, and something rotting. Fish, maybe. Or, why does it smell like dockside trash in here? I whispered to no one. From the distance, faint and musical, open quote, down in the deep where the wrong ones sleep, close quote. It was the girl's voice, singing now. But this time it echoed. Not from one mouth, from many. I ran. Again, third time that day. My cardio was killing it. And then I tripped, because of course I did. And when I landed, I looked up and saw something carved into the plaster right at eye level. A line, scratched by hand. Open quote, she sat, we saw, she stayed. Close quote, the wall trembled as I touched it. And then I saw a handprint, child-sized. Pressed deep into the paint, fresh. I pressed my hand beside it without thinking. Stupid move. Because the moment I did, something cold and fast ran up my arm. Not liquid, not air. More like information. Downloading. And it was not mine. For a split second, I saw something. A flash. The Marshall family, dressed in identical pale gowns, sitting on chairs in that black chamber. Eyes closed, mouths open, and behind them, something watching. Not human, not alien, just watching. I pulled my hand away, heart hammering like a machine gun, and suddenly the hallway was normal again. Lobby in front of me, daylight through the cracked windows, no humming, no girl. But the badge, still in my hand, and the backside of it had changed. New words now, open quote, you're getting closer, she remembers you. There's a moment when you're reviewing old photos, especially ones not meant for public viewing, where something clicks. Not in a magical aha kind of way. No, it clicks like a door lock, like something you've just accidentally opened, and now you've got to deal with whatever's on the other side. That's what happened with the Marshall's last known family photo. I didn't find it in the newspaper clippings. It wasn't in the archived missing persons files either. It came from a shoebox under the sink in the caretaker's apartment. Literally. The box was water damaged, smelled like menthol and cat pee, and inside it were 12 Polaroids. Most were boring. Birthday parties, a Christmas tree, a baby holding a spoon. But the last one is the reason I'll sleep with my lights on. It showed all 7 members of the Marshall family standing in front of what looked like a chalkboard, maybe in a classroom or therapy room, I couldn't tell. But instead of smiling, they all looked dazed, like someone had woken them from a deep nap and told them to pretend they were okay. Mr. Marshall's shirt had a faint smear of what looked like paint, or maybe blood if you're being cynical. One of the twins was holding a sock puppet. None of them were looking in the same direction. But the worst part? There was an 8th figure in the frame, standing slightly behind them, just to the left. A pale woman in a nurse's dress. Face blurred, not by camera motion, but like someone had smeared the emulsion, or like the photo rejected her face. You know that trick your eyes do where they try to complete a missing shape? That's what mine kept doing with her, trying to assign a face. But every time I blinked, it shifted. She was tall, wrongly tall, with elbows that bent slightly in the wrong direction and hands that disappeared just below her waist, like they faded into the background. She was the only one making eye contact with the camera. Later, when I scanned the photo to enhance it, the digital file glitched. I'm talking full-on image corruption. The timestamp reset to 1901 and the resolution warped into a fisheye lens effect. But before the file crashed, I managed to see one detail I missed before, the chalkboard behind the family. Written in childlike block letters were the words, open quote, took our medicine, made us better, we see now, close quote, and underneath scribbled smaller in red ink, open quote, don't sit down, close quote. That phrase again. I sat back in the caretaker's chair, stared at the Polaroid, and realized something else, something no one else seemed to notice in the records. There are no exit photos. No images of the marshals leaving Larkspur, no security footage, no signatures on discharge papers. And yet, according to the hospital's records, they were all marked as discharged on the same day. Discharged at 2 a.m. Who processes family discharges in the middle of the night? Unless they weren't discharged by staff. Maybe they left through a different process, one that didn't involve doors. I pulled out my phone and searched for more references to that phrase, "don't sit down." It wasn't as rare as I hoped. It showed up in transcripts from other hospitals, in whispered reports of experimental psychiatric techniques, in two completely unrelated asylum investigations decades apart, where patients vanished after being told to undergo chair time reflection. One of those investigations ended with the entire wing being shuttered due to spiritual contamination, whatever that means. But the part that got me most, one nurse's anonymous note leaked to a message board years ago. It read, open quote, "They said the chair was to process grief, but it doesn't process anything. It takes. The longer they sit, the more it knows. One girl tried to run during session 3. The chair screamed." Close quote. You know what else screams? My common sense, which at this point was trying to wrestle my spine into leaving the property. But I wasn't ready yet. I needed more. That photo proved the marshals had contact with something, and that something was still circling the drain here at Larkspur. I went back down to the records room, now knowing what to search for. I combed through logs for anything tagged CH3 or session chair. That's when I found it. A handwritten note slipped into a billing folder. Patient 71 did not complete 4th sit, eyes reversed, disappeared from mouth outward, chair unoccupied but humming, no physical trace recovered. Dr. Mormon. You ever read something that makes your brain physically recoil, like you can feel your neurons screaming too much abort? Yeah, eyes reversed. What does that even mean? But that was it, my proof. The marshals didn't walk out of Larkspur. They were consumed or transitioned by whatever entity or device existed in that chair room. And if I was right, that meant the girl I saw upstairs, the one humming, wasn't just a ghost or trauma echo. She was a survivor, or worse, a messenger. Back in my car, I flipped the Polaroid one more time. Someone had etched something into the back with a pin or needle. I had to tilt it in the sunlight to see it. The chair watches, but it's hungry when you forget. Oh, good. Memory-based furniture with abandonment issues. Totally normal. The next step was obvious, and obviously terrible. I had to go back to the chair room, but not alone, which meant I had to find someone else who had been there, someone who had walked away, or thought they had. And as it turned out, there was one name that kept showing up, scribbled in the margins of various records, signed off on medication batches, even mentioned once in a strange letter from a patient. A former orderly, still alive, still local, and according to the internet, still trying to forget. His name, Eldon Kipp. Eldon Kipp lived about 40 minutes outside of town, on a stretch of road that dead-ended into cattails and train tracks. The kind of place where phone reception comes and goes like a ghost looking for its keys. His house had a sagging porch, wind chimes that didn't chime, and a dozen empty hummingbird feeders hanging like offerings. I didn't knock. I just waited on the steps. He saw me through the screen and came out holding a mug that said, "World's okayest granddad," and nothing else. No greeting, no small talk, just those pale blue eyes and a warning look that said, "If you're here for Larkspur, turn around." I asked anyway. "You worked there, didn't you?" He didn't answer right away, just sipped his coffee and stared out at the trees. I was about to leave when he said quietly, "I changed the bulbs." I waited. That was my job. After what happened in '92, they wouldn't let me near the patients, so I changed the bulbs, even the ones in the chair room. He said it like I'd already know what that meant, like the chair room had a gravity of its own. "You remember the marshals?" I asked. His mug hit the porch railing. Not hard, but hard enough to spill coffee. "Too many," he muttered. It wasn't an answer, not really, but he turned and shuffled back into the house, and I followed like a stray dog. Inside, it smelled like copper and lemon cleaner. The walls were covered in quilts, some unfinished, some torn at the corners. He didn't offer a seat, just walked over to a filing cabinet that didn't match the furniture and opened the bottom drawer. "Your hands clean?" he asked. "Probably not." He handed me a folder anyway. Inside were 5 patient intake sheets, all labeled Marshall. 7 of them, I said. "Where are the other 2? He shook his head. Never officially admitted, the youngest boy and the grandmother. They were supposed to stay off-site. The facility had a rule about multi-generational admissions, something about cognitive boundary contamination. Of course, I flipped through the documents. Most of the forms were half completed, like someone started filling them out and then just gave up. But one note was clear, in heavy black pen at the top of Jane Marshall's file. Open quote, "Subject eligible for CH3 protocol. Receptivity index, 87%, close quote. "What's CH3? I asked. Kip didn't answer directly. He just pointed to a faded Polaroid taped inside the folder. It was a picture of Jane Marshall sitting in the session chair. She was smiling, sort of, but her eyes were wrong, off-center, and her shadow on the floor wasn't hers. It stretched in the wrong direction, bent at the neck, like it was staring somewhere else. They called it cognitive harmonization, he said, but it wasn't therapy. It was tuning, like getting a person to match the frequency of whatever was inside that chair. He sat down finally as if the air had gotten heavy. "First sit is fine," he went on. "They call it reflection. You close your eyes, the lights hum, you feel calm. Second sit, they push deeper. They show you images, places you've never been, people you swear you recognize, but it's the third sit that breaks you. What happens then? You leave something behind." I didn't press him. He looked like he hadn't slept since rotary phones were cool. They said the Marshalls were progressing, that they were unusually compatible, whole family was resonating, whatever that means, and then one day they were gone. He paused. No notice. No personal items packed. No goodbye. Just a memo from upstairs. Marshall family discharged, phase complete. He handed me another sheet, a medical log dated 3 days before the disappearance. One entry stood out. Open quote, "Subject J. Marshall reported dreams of chairs growing legs and walking into the sea. Subject D. Marshall refused food, claimed it smelled like metal and static. Subject T. Marshall stated the nurse has no knees. Recommendation, increase to phase 3 early." Close quote. I let out a breath I didn't realize I was holding. "Do you think they're still alive?" Kip snorted. "Alive? No. Changed? Maybe. The chair doesn't kill you, it rewrites you." He leaned in then, voice barely above a whisper. "I saw one come back." My stomach dropped. "One of the Marshalls?" He nodded. "The oldest daughter, Sarah. 2 weeks after they vanished, showed up at the back door of the West Wing, covered in dirt, eyes completely white, like cataracts, but she walked like she could see, didn't speak, just hummed." "The tune?" I asked. He hummed it then, low, drawn out like a song from underwater. Same melody I'd heard upstairs. The same one the girl had been humming behind the broken glass. "We called the doctors. They took her into isolation. She was gone by morning. No one talked about it after that. If you mentioned it, if you even asked, you got reassigned." He looked down at his trembling hands. "I changed bulbs. That's all." I knew he was telling the truth, or his version of it, which honestly might be worse. "Do you have any photos of the chair itself?" "No, cameras wouldn't work. Every photo came out blank or burned. We tried sketching it once. The paper curled." I stood to leave, my head spinning. As I reached the door, he added one more thing. "If you go back there, if you sit in it, don't hum." I stopped. Why? Because that's how it learns your voice. Outside, the sun was setting behind the cattails. The wind was warm, and something buzzed in my back pocket. My phone, a new message. No name, just a number I didn't recognize. The text, open quote, "Session scheduled 2 a.m. Chair is ready." Okay, first of all, yes, I went back. And no, I didn't tell anyone. Because by that point, I knew what would happen if I did. People disappear around this story, like lint in a vacuum. Say the wrong name, mention the wrong year, or even hum the wrong melody, and suddenly your neighbors forget what you look like. You disappear from the yearbook. Your name isn't in the lease. People say, "Oh, I thought they moved away," but you didn't. You just got tuned out. So when I got that text at 8:17 p.m., session scheduled 2 a.m., chairs ready. I didn't panic. I didn't even hesitate. I just packed a granola bar, 2 flashlights, and 3 strips of duct tape. I don't know why. It felt like a duct tape kind of night. The gate to Larkspur was open when I got there. No chains, no rust, just swinging slightly in the breeze like it had been expecting me. The gravel sounded sharper that night, gray, like stepping on bone chips. I parked by the same willow tree and killed the lights. I didn't bring a weapon. I don't know what you'd use on something that eats memory. I went straight for the West Wing. If you've ever walked through an abandoned psychiatric facility alone at 2 a.m, I give you permission to brag about it forever. It's not bravery. It's agreed madness. It's also the fastest way to realize that silence has a shape. And that night, it was oval, hollow in the middle, like something was holding its breath. I didn't need a map. The hallway lit itself up. Flickering fluorescents buzzed one by one ahead of me like runway lights for an invisible plane. And there it was, the chair room. This time, the door wasn't jammed. It creaked open like an invitation, not a warning. The air inside was 10 degrees cooler, and it smelled like the inside of an old wristwatch. Dust and ozone and something that might have once been citrus. The chair itself? Not what I expected. No leather, no straps, no wires, just a smooth curved shape that looked grown instead of built, like a big gray tulip with a seat carved in. It sat under a single bulb, and the floor beneath it was covered in circular stains. Not blood, something more like watercolor. Pale blues, faint reds like the residue of dreams that couldn't dry properly. I walked around it once, then I sat. And yeah, it was comfortable, like unfairly comfortable. It molded to my spine in a way my therapist's couch never could. And for a second I thought, maybe this is how it gets you. It seduces you with lumbar support, but then the bulb above me pulsed once, and the hum started. Same as before. Low, ancient, like whale song played backward, or a VHS tape rewinding memories that didn't belong to me. And then it happened. Not slowly, not gradually, instantly. I was somewhere else. A room, I think. Lit from nowhere, filled with people but wrong, like they were painted there, frozen in the middle of conversations they'd never started. Some were crying, some were mid-laugh, some were just staring. Every single one of them had a name tag. Every name said Marshall. I tried to stand, but I couldn't move. My arms were jelly. My legs had become polite suggestions. Then the floor fell. Not literally, but everything dropped. My stomach, my sense of place, my memory of what day it was. I landed in a hallway, gray tile, flickering light, and across from me, Sarah Marshall, older than the photos, probably mid-30s now, same long black hair, same unblinking eyes, only now her mouth was moving but no sound came out. I read her lips, open quote, "Don't hum," close quote. I nodded. She pointed to a door behind her. I blinked and she was gone. The door had no handle, but it opened anyway. Inside, a library. Shelves stacked with VHS tapes, none labeled. Just spines marked with symbols I couldn't decode. And in the center of the room, another chair. This one empty and glowing faintly from the inside. I approached, and just before I reached it, the voice started. Right behind me. "You've been wondering where they went." I turned. No one. "You've been recording this," it said. "Collecting. Like stories are safe." That got my blood cold. I didn't answer. I couldn't. "Go ahead," it whispered. "Ask your questions." So I did. "Where are the Marshalls now?" The answer was a sound, a chorus of sounds, laughter, screaming, children singing in the wrong key, television static layered over Morse code, and then a silence so thick it crushed my chest. The voice returned, softer. "They're here, but not all at once." Suddenly, I was back in the first room, the tulip-shaped chair. The bulb above me blinked once, twice. And then I woke up in my car, engine running, radio playing static. Time, 2:09 a.m. My phone buzzed, one new photo in my gallery. It was me, sitting in the chair, eyes rolled back, mouth open, and behind me, 7 silhouettes, lined up, facing away, facing the wall. I checked the rearview mirror. No one there, but something was humming in the air vents. Same tune, same pitch, same impossible harmony. And just as I turned the key to kill the engine, my own voice whispered back at me from the speaker. I didn't sleep after the chair. I didn't shower. I didn't even brush my teeth. I drove straight home, locked the door, and did what any sane person would do. I sat under the kitchen table with a blanket, 3 snacks, and all the lights on. Because for the first time in my life, I wasn't scared of the dark. I was scared of memory. It wasn't just what I remembered. It was what I didn't. There were holes in my day like someone had edited my life with scissors and tape. I looked at my call log, no calls. But I remembered talking to my friend Mason. I checked my fridge, full of leftovers I don't recall cooking. And the weirdest thing? 2 plates in the sink. One with crumbs, one with nothing at all. I live alone. I even checked the Nest camera. It had blinked offline for 2 hours, exactly from 2 to 4 a.m. When it came back on, the footage showed me sitting at the kitchen table, just sitting, smiling, not blinking. But here's the catch. I wasn't wearing what I wore that night. I was wearing something else, something older. From college, maybe? That flannel I lost back in 2016? I paused the footage and zoomed in, and yep, my wristwatch in the video had a crack I distinctly remember repairing, which means it wasn't from tonight, it was from years ago, but I'd never had that camera back then. I started writing everything down. Every detail from the chair, the humming, Sarah Marshall's silent warning. I filled 5 pages before I hit the strangest realization yet. The Marshalls hadn't vanished. They'd been sorted. I know. It sounds insane, but hear me out. What if the disappearances weren't about abduction, but about categorization? Like someone or something deciding who stays and who gets shelved. That library I saw with the unlabeled tapes, I don't think they were watching people. I think they were filing them. By emotion, by fear, by resonance. I went looking for more evidence the next morning, back to the old newspaper files. I wanted to find anything on a similar case. Families vanishing, names reappearing, people coming back different. And boy, did I find something. A police report filed March 14th, 1985. No headline, just a buried note in the town archives. Family of 5. Last name Trainer. Gone overnight. Home undisturbed. Dinner still on the table. Dog found in the yard, barking at nothing for hours. There was a photo, and in the background, same tulip chair, except it was upside down, like someone tried to hide it. I followed the breadcrumbs. Turns out LARKSPUR wasn't the first. There'd been other chairs, other programs, some medical, some spiritual, all buried under shell corporations and mental health retreats that never made it past the planning phase. But what chilled me to the bone was this. Every family that vanished, always an odd number of people. Never even. 7, 9, 5, never 6, never 4. Why? Maybe the sorting only works in prime numbers, or maybe they always leave one behind. To tell the story, I was halfway through jotting that down when I heard it. A knock, 3 short taps, 1 long. I froze. Classic horror mistake, I know, but curiosity is stronger than fear when you've already heard your own voice on the radio. I peeked through the peephole, no one. But on the doormat, another plate, same pattern as the one I washed this morning. Just a few crumbs and a folded paper napkin. Written on it in pen, open quote, eat first, remember later. Close quote. I didn't eat it. I'm not that dumb. But I took it inside. Ran a fingerprint test kit on it. Don't ask why I have one. Let's just say true crime YouTube fans don't mess around. 1 clean fingerprint, not mine. I ran it through a public database. And guess what? Sarah Marshall. Only it wasn't listed under missing persons. It was listed under deceased. Date of death, March 3rd, 1999. But the autopsy line, open quote, no remains recovered, declared posthumous based on mass casualty classification. Close quote, I looked that up. It means they decided you're dead because too many people disappeared at once, and you probably were with them, which means Sarah never made it out. Except I saw her. She warned me. So either the system is lying or something's feeding false data into the records. And that raises an even worse question. What if the chair doesn't just store memories? What if it fabricates them? I went back to check my journal. The 5 pages I wrote, gone, replaced with one line, written over and over, open quote, "Don't bring them back." And on the last page, an address. One I don't remember writing, but I know what it means. I'm being invited to the sorting room, and this time I'm not going alone. You know how, when you're driving somewhere unfamiliar, your stomach can tell before your brain does that you're getting close? That weird tightness behind the ribs? Yeah. That started 5 miles out from the address I'd written in my notebook. It wasn't a normal place. It wasn't even on Google Maps. That alone should have been my first clue. It was listed on the napkin as Nocturne Lane, Parcel 5. Nothing else. No state. No city. Just a hand-scrawled identifier that felt more like a library index than a physical address. But the GPS, somehow, it understood. I ended up on a service road behind a shuttered rest stop in Idaho, which should have been impossible because I never crossed the state line. I know because I never stopped for gas. But there I was, in front of a rusted gate, wild wheat surrounding it, barbed wire dangling like someone had just walked through. The gate opened by itself. No creak, no resistance, and no welcome sign. The road beyond wasn't a road at all, just 2 tire paths sunken into gray dirt, flanked by long grasses and the occasional shattered mirror nailed to a post. I counted 11 mirrors before I stopped looking. They all showed me from different angles. One of them even blinked when I didn't. Real nice. The building at the end wasn't a building either. It was more like a grain silo with windows, round, gleaming, and somehow still casting no reflection. I parked 30 feet back and walked the rest of the way with a flashlight and a stick, like that would help. I tapped on the steel door. It opened inward without a sound. Inside? Well, sorting room doesn't quite capture it. Imagine if a museum archive, a funeral home, and a meditation spa had a baby during a thunderstorm. That's what it felt like. Dim lavender lighting. Shelves, so many shelves stacked high with unmarked plastic containers. Each container had a name on it, but no last names, no dates, just first names written in smudged pencil. One wall had a row of chairs, all tulip style, all empty. Except one, you already know which one, and she was waiting for me. "Hi," said Sarah Marshall. Not the ghost of her, not a vision, just her. Same face, same voice, same cardigan I remembered from Larkspur, but her eyes, gray, like clouded over marbles. "You brought the plate," she said. I looked down. Yeah, I still had it in my hand like some kind of rookie. "I didn't eat it." "Good," she said. "That would have meant you were ready." "Ready for what?" She tilted her head. "Sorting." "Okay, cool. Love a good vague answer." "I need to understand," I said. "What happened at Larkspur? Why did they all disappear? Why you?" She turned and walked between the shelves. I followed. The flashlight flickered, then steadied. The containers on the shelves, I looked closer. They weren't empty. They each held a cassette tape. No label. Just a timestamp scratched into the plastic. "Each one is a resonance," she said. "A person's frequency at the moment of interruption." "You mean their death?" She didn't answer. Just opened a container marked Jenna and slipped the tape into a wall-mounted player. The room filled with a humming sound, identical to the one I heard in the chair. And then laughter. Children's laughter. A song in a foreign language, a sudden scream, then silence. "This is what's left when they go," Sarah said softly. "The system records them, slices out what doesn't resonate, archives the rest." "Wait, who slices it?" She turned to me like I'd asked the stupidest question of all time. "You did." "I what?" "You were the one who built the feedback program. You created the chair, you designed the sort index, you wrote the keywords, you mapped the emotional zones." "Sarah," I said, backing up a little, "I've never written a line of code in my life. Not this life. I should have run right then, but I didn't, because somehow part of me already knew." She walked to a drawer and opened it. Inside was a file folder. Tan, worn, no label on the outside. She handed it to me. I opened it. Photos, notes, diagrams, all in my handwriting. A blueprint of the Larkspur facility, a list of names, all 12 participants. Next to each name was a box labeled resonant. 11 said yes, 1 said unknown. It was me. You didn't vanish, Sarah said. You stayed. The program reset you. You've been living different lives over and over, watching the others vanish, never knowing why. My knees went weak. This is the part where I make a joke about forgetting my car keys or misplacing my phone, but none of it felt funny anymore. You're telling me I did all this, I whispered, and forgot? No, she said, we forgot, you and me, the developers. We looped our own memories so the test could be blind. You made sure of it. I looked at her. Why would I do that? Because the moment you do remember, the sorting finishes. I turned to run. Too late. Every chair in the room turned to face me. Empty? No. Each one held someone I knew. Mason, my old neighbor from college, the woman who sold me my first microphone for this channel. Each one of them, eyes closed, humming. Where do they go? I asked. Sarah smiled gently. They don't go. Gosh, they're placed, preserved, edited. Can I bring them back? You can try, she said, but remember what you wrote. She handed me a folded piece of paper. I opened it. Open quote, don't bring them back. Close quote. I dropped it. And behind me, the chair was empty now. Waiting. The tape on the desk had my name. I sat down. The tape didn't make a sound at first, just a quiet click as it slipped into the player, then a long pause like the machine needed to decide whether or not I was ready. You ever hear a sound so quiet it's louder than anything else? That's what came next. Not silence. The opposite of silence. A kind of pressure, like being underwater with your ears full and someone whispering through the ocean directly into your skull. Then came a voice. Mine. Laughing. I don't know how to describe the way it felt to hear myself speaking to myself, but not with words I remembered saying. The voice was laid back, sarcastic, charming, in a smug kind of way. Not unlike how I sound when I'm talking to you right now. Except this version of me, he wasn't telling a story. He was giving instructions. Open quote, if you're hearing this, it means the sort loop has calibrated. Don't panic. You've lived through 12 loops and survived 11. That's one more than we expected. So, congrats. Close quote. Sarah stood at the edge of the room, arms folded, watching me like a teacher waiting for the punchline to land. Open quote, now you have a choice, said the voice on the tape. You can finish what we started, finalize the placement protocols, close the system, and release the resonant forms into memory fields. Or you can exit. No memory, no trace, just a blank loop restart. Close quote. I looked up from the chair. Sarah, this is insane. Memory fields? Placement protocols? I don't remember signing up for any of this. But you did, she said. You were the first. I didn't ask to be. That was the point, she said quietly. The lights in the room shifted then, from lavender to a strange, warm amber, like early morning sun filtered through sand. That's when I noticed the other chairs were starting to empty. One by one, the people in them were dissolving, not disappearing, not vanishing, but streaming upward, like they were being lifted out of the story and turned back into data. Faint trails of glowing ash spiraling into the high corners of the ceiling where I could see little square grates labeled calibrated. I realized I was crying. No emotion behind it, just my body reacting to something my brain couldn't absorb. I looked down. The paper was still on the floor. Open quote, don't bring them back. Close quote. The tape clicked again. My voice returned, this time softer. Open quote. Oh, if you're wondering why you're crying, it's the sync. It happens to all of us during part 14. You always hold on too long. Every version of you. That's why I'm telling you this now. Let go. Don't dig. Don't archive. Don't name. Just finish. Close quote. Joke time? Okay, here's one. A ghost walks into a therapy session, says, I keep haunting the same house because I'm scared of change. Therapist says, same time, next loop? Yeah, not funny anymore, is it? Sarah walked toward the chair. She wasn't dissolving like the others. You're not part of the loop, are you? She smiled. I'm the final memory, she said. You stored me as the boundary marker. Of what? The end of the experiment, the part where the observer becomes the observed. The lights in the ceiling dimmed again. A thin ring of light surrounded my chair now. Every other object faded, just outlines in gray, furry, as if they were being erased frame by frame. The machine behind me hummed louder. The humming matched my heart rate. Sarah reached out and handed me something, a cassette tape. Blank. No name, no timestamp. This is for your next self, she said, in case you don't choose. Choose what? To be remembered. Behind me, the tape I'd been listening to stopped. Another click. One final line. Open quote. If you're still hesitating, then maybe it's time for you to hear what happened to the kids. Close quote. My whole body went cold. What kids? I asked. But Sarah didn't answer. She just turned to a shelf on the far end, one I hadn't noticed before, and opened a drawer marked LARKSPUR Children, Deferred. Inside were 5 tiny tapes. Each had a first name: Hannah, Micah, Rue, Ansel, Dev. I grabbed them, hands shaking. These weren't in the report, I said. No one said there were children at the commune. The files only mentioned adults. Sarah nodded slowly. Because you removed them. You didn't want them remembered. You said it was kinder. I would never. You did. She took a step back. Now you have to decide. Archive them again or place them. The system was waiting. The chair beneath me vibrated slightly. The light narrowed to a single circle. It was decision time. I looked at the blank tape in my lap, then at the children's names. Place them, and they become part of the system forever. Safe but unreachable. Archive them and risk repeating the loop over and over until someone else finds the truth. Neither choice felt right, but this was my mess. I made it. And now I had to choose. I took a breath and spoke the word that ended the loop. Of course you do. It's the question everyone asks. But here's the thing. The word wasn't magic. It wasn't a spell or a code. It wasn't even complicated. It was just enough. The system didn't like that. The lights in the sorting room pulsed so hard I thought the whole place would crack apart. The chairs, the empty ones, the dissolving ones, stopped mid-evaporation. The names on the containers began to flicker, phasing in and out like they were fighting to exist. And Sarah, she didn't move, didn't flinch. You chose, she said quietly. Yeah, I said, I'm ending it. That means none of them come back, she said. I know. They'll vanish, for real this time. No memory, no archives, not even echoes. You're erasing them. I'm erasing this, I said. The chair, the loops, the humming, all of it. For a moment, it felt like time held its breath. The air in the room thickened, like gravity had doubled. And then the humming stopped. The shelves collapsed as if they'd never been real. The containers shattered into fine mist, evaporating before they hit the ground. The children's tapes in my hand dissolved like paper in rain. Sarah stepped closer. You know what happens now, she said. Yeah. You disappear too. I nodded. I'd already made peace with that. The world fell apart slowly, not with explosions or fire, but like a photograph left out in the sun. Colors faded, shadows blurred, my body felt lighter with every breath, my thoughts unspooling into threads. I was terrified, sure, but also free. Sarah was the last thing I saw. You did it, she whispered. It's done. And then she was gone. So was the chair. So was the room. So was I. I woke up to the smell of lavender and mildew. Sound familiar? Yeah. I was back at the house on St. Elia Ridge, only this time it wasn't empty. Laughter drifted down the hallway. Children's laughter. And voices. Dozens of voices. People. Talking. Living. I followed the sound, and there they were, the Marshalls, all of them, whole, awake, no humming, no dazed stares, no shadows bent in the wrong direction, just a family sitting around a table eating breakfast like nothing had happened. One of the twins looked up and smiled. You stayed, she said. I guess I did, I whispered. She tilted her head. Are you coming to eat? I looked at the table. 7 plates and 1 empty chair. Mine. I'm not going to lie to you. I don't know how long this lasts. If I blink, maybe they're gone again. If I walk outside, maybe I wake up in another loop. But right now, the house is warm. Right now, there's food on the table. Right now, I can hear voices that aren't mine. And for the first time in a long, long time, it's enough. Conclusion, 300 words. We've reached the end, not with a bang, not with a twist, but with something softer, because sometimes endings don't feel like endings. They just fade out. I know this story left a mark. That humming is probably still in your head, isn't it? that sense that the world around you has layers you can't see, that maybe you've lived pieces of this before, and maybe you have. But here's the thing. The fact that you're here listening means you're still anchored. You're still part of the memory. That's not something to take lightly. So if you're lying in bed right now, eyes half closed, wondering if you'll wake up in the same place you fell asleep, just breathe. Let the last images blur. Picture a warm room, a table, laughter in the background, the smell of something sweet baking in the oven. There's a chair waiting for you, but you don't have to sit in it. You can just stand at the door, listening, breathing, and knowing you're safe, because you are. I'm right here. So before we go, I want to thank you for staying with me. These stories get heavy, I know, but you keep coming back. That means more than I can explain. Now turn off the lights, maybe turn on the fan for some soothing noise, and get some sleep tonight. You've earned it. Good night.